Beth Neville, and this is Art and Life, and I greatly appreciate you watching today. We're going to take on a really difficult topic. Once you grasp the concept, you'll never forget it. It's sort of like learning a math problem. It has to do with shapes that are three-dimensional in space. And the topic today is how to draw a barn. Now, I was brought up on a farm, and we had a barn for sheep, all right? And it was a very simple barn. It was 2 stories. In the second top was the mow, M-O-W, the mow, and that's where the hay was stored. And as a teenager, I once or twice went out with my dad, and we mowed the hay and we put it up in the mow. The sheep were stayed down below. So I have this very vivid memory of this very simple 19th century barn, which blew down in a terrific hurricane, just went flat over, and that was the end of the sheep barn. So the interesting thing about a barn is that it's a very, as I say, a fairly simple cubic shape, usually with a peaked roof. So if we're talking about linear, that is line, perspective, how things are perceived in space, linear perspective, which we're going to do today, we have to try to figure out what is our angle that we're looking at. How are we observing or perceiving that cubic shape, that barn, the sheep barn? There's one very simple way to do it, and I've made a model of a house, crazy model, but we'll pretend for today it's a sheep barn. So here is the model, all right? We can look at the sheep barn as if we were going right in the front door. Pretend this is a barn, all right, not a house. That would be what's called one-point perspective. There is one viewpoint, and it's right in front of you. Now I'm going to show you some examples of one-point perspective that I think will make this very clear. This one is the most obvious. It is a road with lines going down the middle, and everything is focused on this point back here, and that is what we call the vanishing point, where things seem to vanish in the distance. So that, I think, is the clearest example I have. Let's look at another one. Here's sort of a quasi-colonial house, and there's a brick walk. And the brick walk takes you right to the front door. If you were going to put a ruler on this, which we're going to do right now, we'll use this little ruler, which is a gift from Kathleen Terrell in my art class, all right? So here we go. We're putting this ruler on this line, and it goes right to there, right to that spot. If we put it over here, it goes right to that spot. If there was a stone walkway, it would also go directly to that spot. One spot, one vanishing point. Here's another example. This is the example that was taught by my 8th grade teacher, Mr. McCourt, who taught us everything from Latin to French to science to perspective to diagramming sentence. What an amazing teacher in the great John Dewey tradition. So he gave a demonstration on the blackboard, yes, a blackboard with a white chalk, of the railroad tracks that lead to, again, one distant point on the horizon. This is your horizon line right here. That is the horizon line. And all the lines converge on that point. The lines of the rails, the lines of the trellises that hold it up, whatever they are, I'm not sure the trellises, the telephone poles and so on, lead back to that point. Here's another very interesting one that I've found a number of years ago. Here's a lighthouse, and in this one, the lighthouse door is the place where the lines, the focal point of the camera, where the person is standing, leads to that spot. And everything is like a fan. If you notice, I do this with the plastic ruler. It's a big fan all leading back to that point. There's another famous example. This is artwork by Utrillo, and he chose in his artwork a one-point perspective. And if you see, all the buildings lead back to that point. Now, we all know that if the lines actually met, the train would go off the tracks. The road would end. We couldn't get in the front door of the house. We wouldn't be able to get into the lighthouse. So they seem to come together visually, but they don't really converge. If they did, we would have a terrible accident with a train or a car or walking. So it's a theory that helps us visualize how things are arranged in space, but it is a visual theory. Now, the next thing is two-point perspective. Now, what's happening with that? In this one, we no longer see the barn this way. We see the barn at an angle, and we see two sides of the cube or the barn. One over here, one over here. Two sides are not visible. And we're looking right about here. So the camera or the viewer is looking here. Therefore, we do not see the bottom of the cube, and we don't see the top of the cube. We're just seeing two facets here. We do see the roof, but that's a separate issue. The roof juts above the top, but you're not looking at the top. So two-point perspective, I have some examples here. I think this is the one that's the most, the clearest, all right? I've tried the best one I could find in terms of drawing a barn. It's a little bit flexible here. We have one face here, one side, and over here we have another side. We don't see the top, we don't see the bottom, and we don't see the two rear sides. In this case, the lines are converging way over here, and these lines are converging way over there. This is a little more difficult to see. I hope it'll be posted behind me so you'll be able to make it out. But again, these cubes are seen from two sides, leading off in this direction to a vanishing point over here, and leading off to a vanishing point over there. This old mill photo, I think, also gets the point across that lines are going here and there. We see the rooftops, don't see the back two sides. One other example, I love this photo, it's just a gorgeous photo. These are all from calendars, calendar art. That is a good source for this type of material. And we can see the different lines here. What's nice about this is it brings up the circular perspective that we talked about when we talked about the lighthouses and the glass. It's a wonderful example of circular perspective in the two silos, very old-fashioned silos, not used anymore. And this also is a very good example. We've got one side here, and then it gets a little more complicated because there are three barns linked together, and that makes it a little bit more complex in trying to decide what's going on. I want to show you one example of an even more complex topic, and that is three-point perspective. Now, if you really want to get difficult, which hardly anybody ever does, you're going to get into what's called 3 points, three vanishing points. One is over here, one is over here, and one is up in the sky. And that is what you would use if you were drawing a skyscraper. If you're trying to draw the Empire State Building, and you're standing at the base of the Empire State Building, you're going to have to figure out how the lines of the tower, that vast tower, seem to converge up in the air somewhere. So that's and you can see how peculiar it looks to draw a tall building. It's probably, people don't spend a lot of time, artists don't spend a lot of time drawing modern buildings because it looks so weird. You know, it's weird enough in a photograph, and you can imagine how weird it would be if you were doing a drawing of it. All right, so that's 1, 2, and 3-point perspective. Now, I'm going to stand up. My husband Robert, who's doing the filming, is going to readjust the camera, and we're going to look at the box and try to analyze what's going on. What What's most baffling for people who are trying to understand perspective is that a cube, we're talking about the cube, forget about the peaked roof, has three basic edges that are run parallel to each other. You remember from childhood math classes, parallels, they go together and they don't converge one way or the other. So where are the three? And I thought maybe I could make this a little bit easier to understand if we used tape. And here's my tape. Okay. And I'm going to put a strip of paper, colored paper, on each set of parallel lines. So here's the orange set. This is, I'm just arbitrarily picking this out. I hope this tape is going to work for me. Okay, here's one edge. This edge is parallel to that one, so it's going to get an orange color. All right, this is going to go over here. Here's orange. All right. Now, some of you watching this may know all about perspective, but I hope you'll watch anyway, just for the fun of it, to see how I try to teach perspective. You know, it's such a complicated topic for people who don't understand it. I'm always trying to find new ways, pedagogical ways, to explain what's going on, and my labeling, color labeling of the three sets of parallel lines is a new teaching technique that I thought of. So you all are getting the first demonstration of this teaching technique. Okay, we see those four sets, four lines running parallel to each other. Now, there's a set down here that goes this way, all right? So on this one, we're actually going to have 8. I should have cut out 4 more pieces of red, all right? This is parallel to this. You're going to use your imagination because I don't want to take time to cut 4 more strips of paper. All right, so this one, these are the 4 sets, the 4 lines, actually 8 because we have a top and a bottom. All right, there are 2, and they are running, oh, no, I'm wrong, backtrack, teacher error, there are 4 of these. Okay, I was right, there are 4. 3 sets of parallel lines. All right, and then this one goes up here, and then, okay, the last set is this set, all right, and we're going to make those yellow. Okay, so here's our yellow set. Okay, we're pasting this down. All right, here's here, one up here. This is these 2 are parallel. All right, and I hope you can imagine now where, are you figuring out where the remaining set of parallel lines is? It is over here. So, yes, this goes here. All right, we're going to analyze this one more time after I do my tacking down of color strips. Here's one over here. I wish I'd thought of this years ago. I mean, I've taught perspective so many times, teenage classes, taught it at middle school, I don't know, just all over everywhere, and I never thought of this before, but I think it's going to really be a help in understanding what's going on. So, in a cube, we have 3 sets of parallel lines. Each set consists of 4 lines. So, watch. Look at the yellows. 1. Let's put the ruler on it. Big ruler. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yellows. Red. 1, 2, 3, 4. Orange. 1, 2, 3, 4. These lines that you see here, let's take the yellow ones. If we're looking at it this side, we're going to see the yellow and the red are going to appear to converge way over on a distant horizon. Now let's talk a little bit about the peak while we've got it here, and then I'm going to do some drawing. The peak of the roof is also, ask yourself, is it a yellow? Does it run parallel to the yellow? No. Does it run parallel to the orange? No. It runs parallel to the red. So the peak of the roof is also going to seem to disappear over in this direction. Now what about these lines? These two lines also converge. That's where we get into three-point perspective. I'm not going to stress that too much, except that it's, in making a drawing, it's a classic beginner error, and maybe I can just show you that. If we don't get it in this week, we'll talk about it next. We're going to talk about this next week as well. So these two also converge in this way, and these two converge up in the sky over here. But we'll try to get to that. So this is our basic barn, sheep barn, and we're going to draw this side and this side. Now, what I'm going to try to do is to put some tracing paper down here. And see if we can make sense of this. All right, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to draw our horizon line. The horizon line is straight. I've got to get rid of my barn. Goodbye, barn. Okay. So, horizon line. Okay, here we go. All right. That is the line where when you're standing, looking out in space, this is where your eyes are looking out at the edge of the horizon. So it's often called HP, horizon, or HL, I mean horizon line. So to draw our barn, I'm going to start with a part of the barn that is closest to me. And I'm going to use this house. I think this is the clearest one. So the first line I'm going to draw is this one. This is the part that is closest to me. So I'm going to draw that coming down. All right, that's the part of the barn, the sheep barn that's closest to me. And my eyes are not looking, I'm not down there like a little mouse in the ground, and I'm not a bird up in the sky. I'm a human being looking at the barn. So what I'm looking at is going to be about, like, as if I were going in the door. All right, I'm going in the door of the barn, more or less. Now, this one side of the barn is going to be further away from you, and we're going to make that one shorter. And the bottom of the barn is going to appear to disappear over here, on, over to a distant horizon vanishing point. The top side of the barn is going to be here, going on, disappearing over there. And that will represent, for the time being, that's going to represent this side. Now you realize I'm making this up off my head as I go along, right? This is a mythical barn this is the barn that got blown down in the windstorm. The wind blew for 3 days. We could feel the roof on the house going up and down. One of the scariest times in my life. 3 days that hurricane blew. We got up finally, the third day went out, and the barn was flatter than a pancake. Just thank God it wasn't our house. Okay, the other side of the barn is going to be over here. I'm going to make it a little shorter, and that's disappearing way over here. And this side is disappearing over here. Now, we're looking at this. Okay, let's go back to this. I have drawn the yellow lines, yellow, yellow. I've drawn the red lines, and now these are the orange lines. Okay, so this one is going to be the orange line. All right, so there's the two sides of the barn. This line extended a little too far. We're not going to worry about that. We're going to put a door in the barn. All right, the door is going to be about there. Up above there was what they call a mow where the grain was stored, and there was an opening there, and that was so you could get the hay up into that area. You would have a ladder, and sometimes the hay wagon All right, here's the hay wagon. Looked like this. All right, pulled by a tractor. And here was the mound of hay over here on it. Usually it had metal wheels. It was a flatbed. This would be the hay. So when you pulled this device over here, it wasn't so hard to get the hay with a pitchfork. There's a pitchfork. All right, looks like that. You have a pitchfork, you got a big bundle of hay on it, and you toss it in up there. And the sheep were down here. So, all right. Let's pretend that there were some windows in the barn. There were not, but if there were windows, the tops would appear to disappear over here, and the sides would be parallel here. Let's pretend there's another door in the barn. All right, and make another door. All right, and the barn was made out of red wood siding, painted red. I don't know why they painted the barns red, but they did anyway. That's what they were. They were all red. And these lines also will seem to disappear over in the distance here. This side, the siding is going to go, whoops, sorry, that was not a good line. These are going to disappear over here. And you realize that these are beginning to be like a fan. There's a big fan shape here. I'll show you the fan in just a minute. All right, these come down here. All right, here's the, all right. So, and you would see this side would be visible. This side of the door would be visible. There's the door latch, okay? Here's the stuff's coming out. This is a fan. So if I put my ruler on here and continue these down over to the edge, it's going to be a big fan. All right, now what's going to happen with the roof? All right, we're taking on the roof. Okay, gets more complicated. The peak of the roof is going to be midway between point A and point B. Well, technically, it's actually going to be a little closer to B because things, no, a little closer to A because of things being bigger or closer to you. But to make life simple, we're going to say it's midpoint, where it's not technically exactly true. Okay, this is 6 inches, how fortunate. Midpoint is there, 3 inches. So in order to figure out where that peak is going, you kind of measure what's the midpoint, and then you figure out what's the pitch of the roof, how high is it going to be? And that's a matter of judgment. If you can't tell, you take your ruler when you're outdoors and you hold it so it's running parallel to the line you're trying to figure out. You take your ruler like this, put it on that line, and you bring it flat down, and you'll have the angle. You have to practice to do that, but that is a very good way of doing it. Or I'm going to just make a judgment call and say that's the peak. So I'm drawing this line for the peak, and I'm drawing that line for the peak. Now here's where students make the mistake. This is the most common error that occurs. Practically every single person who draws this makes a mistake. When they decide to draw this line, they perceive the roof as being bigger than it actually is. So let me get back to my little example. Well, this is not a good one. All right, let's take this one. Here's the blue. All right, the blue roof. It seems like it's a lot of roof. So they jack this line up they make it go like that. I'm not going to draw it because it's wrong, but they'll draw it like that. This line over here is parallel to that line. So they disappear over here. This line, you just move your ruler right over, bring it in a tiny little bit. There's your line, move it over, slant it in a little bit because it's converging. So it's going to go here, all right? Now, the peak, the top of the roof, where is that coming from? It is parallel to this line, the roof line. So you put your ruler on that roof line, move it up, and when it hits the peak over here, you draw your line. Down comes the line. And that is the shape of the roof. So remember, this line, if they're parallel, it's going to disappear in the same location over here, or actually it's going to be disappear down here. These two lines are going to be disappearing up there. So every time you have a parallel line, You have to think of it as disappearing in the same vanishing point. If you can get that into your head, you'll be able to conquer the problem. Parallel lines appear to vanish at the same place on the horizon. Remember, they don't really converge, or, things would be a disaster. They do not converge. They seem to converge. All right, so if we were drawing roof shingles here, this time, our roof shingles would look, this may make more sense to you if I put these lines in about what's happening here. That one's not well drawn, but anyway, this is the general principle. All right, we'll draw a few more here. Okay, a couple more. All right, these lines coming in here. Roof, pretend there's a tin roof. A lot of these buildings did have tin roofs. So they're heading off over here. These lines remain vertical. Your verticals remain vertical, unless you're doing 3-point, C-A-L, vertical. Vertical, all right. Always spell check with my husband. All right, vertical. If you're doing 3-point perspective, they would also converge, but we're not doing that. These lines over here converge in this direction, and these lines over here converge in this direction. All right, I think that will kind of wind this up. I want to show you a painting that was done by one of my students. This is Mary Driscoll, lives locally, a wonderful painter, and one of my students. And I love this because it shows, how's it showing up? Pretty well?
Good.
Okay. She tackled 3 barns up in Vermont, and she struggled with the perspective, but I think she really got the general idea across of what the barns looked like. And it's a nice example, a very fresh example of getting a perspective down so the buildings are logical, but not getting all hung up on every single tiny little twist and turn or parallel line. And then she combined it very nicely with those autumn colors of orange and green and altogether a very charming work. So I think she deserves a nice credit. Look how beautiful the blue is, the purple Vermont mountains, just a really nice fresh painting. This is an oil painting. She uses water-based oils because it makes the brushes easier to clean out. All right, so that's what I think we're going to wind up here. What we're going to do next week is we're going to try to push this perspective issue just a little bit further and explore trying to draw some covered bridges. I have a wonderful collection, calendar art collection, of colored bridges in around the eastern United States. And they're challenging. If you can draw a covered bridge, you're ready to draw anything. So we'll see if we can take this one step further and draw covered bridges. I hope this helps a little bit. If you already know all about perspective, I hope I was entertaining, and I hope you like my scary story of the barn blowing down, which really was sad. It was a beautiful building. So I hope you stay well. And again, Tom Pilla is doing the editing for me, and my husband Robert Neville is doing the filming, and I really appreciate you watching. And we'll see you next week for another session on linear perspective. And then after that, I promise we're going to get back to more painterly topics. We're going to discuss acrylic painting and its qualities, and we're going to discuss oil painting and its qualities. So we'll get away from this technical stuff and get into how you mix paints and how you handle both oil and acrylic painting. So thank you for watching, and we'll see you next week.